Welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesankos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Saturday night. In fact, it is Sunday, so happy Easter. Because where I do come to you live from in Kampala, Uganda, it's already midnight, 4 minutes past midnight. That means it's 4 minutes past 10 p.m. UK time. And nonetheless, regardless of us being late, we decided to come anyway because one, not because it was intended, it was in part due to unavoidable circumstances. But then, even when the opportunity presented itself, I said, why not wait for those two games between Barcelona and as well as the Arsenal game, and then we can do this conversation. Now, I don't know where we're going to start from, but it's been quite the day. One of jubilations and commiserations, depending on how you see things go through. It's So yeah, it's been one of those evenings. It's been one of those evenings. Yeah, Arsenal have been knocked out of the FA Cup at the hands of Southampton at St. Mary's Stadium. We did talk about the 3-all draw that happened in the run into the Premier League title back in around late March or April 2023. We talked about that 1-0 victory for Southampton at St. Mary's. Told you it's a kind of team that sort of tends to give Arsenal trouble, even though I had gone with a prediction of a 2-1 victory for the Arsenal, which I told you was more wishful than it was objective, given that. So what we had at the end of the day was that defeat for the Arsenal. Then earlier on, we had Liverpool being destroyed by Manchester City, who beat them by 4-0 for them to advance to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. So we'll be talking about that and more. And then we'll talk about, Barcelona left it late against a 10-man Atletico de Madrid, who they beat by 2-1. So I will also get a chance to talk about that. There's a red card there for a straight red card. Initially, a second booking for Nico Gonzalez, which was later upgraded to a straight red card. But Giuliano Simeone had scored to give Atletico de Madrid the lead in that one. So, and then equalizer from Marcus Rashford, and then subsequently you had Robert Lewandowski in the 87th minute. We'll be talking about that game as well in its own rights and context. But yeah, that is what is transpired thus far today. So for those of you that are just joining us, good evening everyone, and welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, so do kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. If it is your first time here with us, do us that absolute honor and favor and pleasure, and like the broadcast. So if you're a football fan, then you are definitely in the right place for us to be talking football on this day. While I was watching the Arsenal game, there's a moment where I thought to myself, how on God's green earth were Chelsea hoodwinked into buying Kepa Arrizabalaga for £72 million? He's such a poor goalkeeper, or at least has looked that poor in recent times. I know he doesn't get to play a lot of games, so maybe the criticism laid in his way is a little bit unfair for a guy that doesn't play a lot of games for us to have the expectation that he's going to be sharp. But to be fair, last season he looked good. Hi, Wagner. Oh, Wagner, Araujo, Wagner from Vikings. Good to have you on the broadcast. I hope you're doing all right. So, I mean, it's the hot cake. Why not discuss it anyway? So Arsenal have been knocked out of the FA Cup at the hands of Southampton. I told you guys, Southampton had knocked out Arsenal in the FA Cup. I think it was at the 4th round back in the season of 2020, 2021, around that period. Yes. So basically, that's what is just transpired. On the night, we've seen. Sorry, more like a repeat of that. they've been beaten by 2-1, and they were the orchestrators of their own downfall, as they have been in many games which they have lost or drawn. And today was not any different. And I'll tell you why. Because once they got the equalizer through Victor Gyökeres, you thought to yourself, okay, well, you're back in the game. Then go ahead and kill off the game. And they did not do that. And once you do not kill off the game, you'll go, trust me, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, because anytime the opponent can cause an upset. And basically that's what happened. I remember, as in a chat room of Arsenal fans who were having a chat about the game, and somebody said something to do with him being confident that they were going to win the game. And in fact, if I don't know if I can find that chat and read it for you. He said, I think, oh, okay. Okay. I'm trying to find that quote exactly, but I don't know. He was sort of saying he was confident Arsenal were going to win the game, and I was telling him, look here, once the game is still square, it can go either way, because it only takes one moment for you to have the upset, Pedri, good evening. Welcome back from that big game. Congratulations on your victory as Barcelona left it late. A guy that you often do not have very much kind words for in Robert Lewandowski, the goal scorer there, to salvage it for you there. So Pedri says, firstly, I want to, firstly, I'm happy you lost. Secondly, I remember when the draw was released 3 weeks ago, you weren't very confident with this game. Remember when we talked about playing smaller teams away? Yeah, we spoke about it. Aaron Phillips, hi. You lost and I won. Well, okay. You say, I love Lewandowski. I feel bad for Poland. You feel bad for Poland. Anyway, you feel bad for Poland. You said that when Sweden knocked them out. But yeah, so I was telling this this Arsenal fan that, look, for as long as the game is still all square, anything can happen, anything can happen. And basically, no sooner had I said that, literally, than Southampton went on to score, and then it was 2-1. So, so he said, I don't feel like we are losing this game. I don't know why I'm so confident, even at 2-1. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, at what point does it become 2-1? It's the 85th minute of the game. Surely, anything can happen in the game of football, but Arsenal did not look like they were destined to make things happen on the same night, really. It didn't feel like that, So, basically, oh, because he was crying. Oh, okay, understand. So, basically, and this, by the way, has very little to do with small or big team. But I think Arsenal fans, and you remember when people kept saying that the Premier League title was as good as done, and I told you guys it's not. Why? And then we talked about the anxiety within the Arsenal fans because they've seen this sort of script before. Now, what you have happening is sort of in different circumstances, at different stages, that Arsenal fans are relieving their team. In many, many years gone by, and by when I say that, I'm talking about the later stages, starting from the later years of Arsene Wenger's tenure, you'd have the month of February and early March where Arsenal would exit all competitions. Previously, you had, after the group stages of the UEFA Champions League, you'd go to the round of 16. And I remember in 7 consecutive years, Arsenal were being knocked out at the round of 16. I think at the hands of Bayern Munich, at the hands of Barcelona, once against AC Milan, once against, I think, Monaco. Then eventually, even the UEFA Europa League, you had that stint with Olympiacos, those kinds of things. So then they would exit the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. And in the Premier League, they would fall so behind the title pursuit that they were never going to win it. In other words, they were out of 4 competitions within a space of the month. Now, guess what is happening? Of course, they've gone 6 years without lifting any piece of silverware ever since winning the FA Cup back in 2020 when they beat Chelsea by 2-1 in the final. Christian Pulisic scoring for Chelsea with Aubameyang scoring for the Arsenal. Now, when you look back in the years after that, you have Southampton knocking them out of the FA Cup. You have teams like Manchester United knocking them out of the FA Cup, and so on and so forth. So last season, they got knocked out at the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. This season, they made it a bit better. They reached the final. They got beat by Man City by 2-0. So they lost that one. And then the conversation went from the quadruple to the treble. And guess what? The first Southampton were, by the way, on a 14 unbeaten game run, which was really, really impressive. And they've extended that to 15 by beating Arsenal by 2-1. And they did not need too much effort, by the way, doing it, because I felt that Arsenal made it simple for them. How did they make it simple? They never created the sort of environment that Southampton needed to defend either too deep or too well for them to stay in the game. You never had that sort of moment where you thought, oh, Arsenal at the top of their game, they're bringing the game to Southampton. You know, there's a couple of moments where, in fact, I did feel like, if anything, there's only one player in Max Dorman who was really trying to carry this team forward in terms of trying to find a goal. And to little success, of course, you know. So they never felt like, it never felt the kind of game that you'd say leaders in the Premier League versus the Championship side. It never felt that way at any one point, in my humble opinion. So it increasingly became difficult, or more less, I could say, difficult actually to imagine how Arsenal were going to win the game, because they were not creating the chances. First of all, they conceded a goal from Ross Stewart. This is in the 35th minute, and Southampton go 1-0 into halftime. We come back in the second half. Now, in the first half, they created only a handful of chances. Martin Odegaard, I think, had an attempt on target. There's one that a cutback from Martinelli that he receives, and as he strikes it, it goes off his right, and he strikes it with his left. Goes off his right and then goes out. Then they looked very poor in set pieces. Gabriel Jesus was a pedestrian in the game. Kai Havertz, until he provides the assist for Victor Gyökeres in the 68th minute, he was he did not have that impact on the game. Gabriel Martinelli, no impact on the game. Ben White struggled through the game. Mars Lewis Kelly spent a lot of time inverting in midfield and literally not impacting the game in any way. And you thought to yourself, maybe try overlapping, you know, because the midfield, it wasn't working. I remember one moment where he does lose the ball because he was trying to be overconfident on the ball, and then he thinks that the referee is going to call it for foul, and he doesn't, just because he's been sort of ricocheted off the ball physically in a physical duel, and they win it off of him. So you looked around, and I mean, when I look at those defenders, maybe Magalhaes' performance was, you know, fair. Christian Mosquera looked a bit sharper, and I remember one moment where he is the one that does the recovery and gets the better of I don't remember who the Southampton striker was, who was going through. And for some reason, Kepa Arrizabalaga had already let himself exposed. I mean, he was already on the floor before even this guy attempts to strike the ball. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? You're literally in no man's land. You know, you have a defender coming, and you've seen him, he's providing for you cover. Make sure you know where you're standing in regards to your goal. Because for a goalkeeper, the last thing you want is not knowing the exact positioning of your goal in which you are. Are you so far to the left, or are you so far to the right? Are you centrally, depending on how you're tracking the ball? Because once you lose sight of that, in terms of, because you ought to sense it at some point, you know, depending on your movement, because it's not like you're going to keep looking backwards to see where you're positioning yourself. Once you lose that, then chances are you're going to concede. In this case, Mosquera recovered really, really well and won the ball back. So he was lucky to get away with that. So when they get the equalizer, they have a couple of moments. Again, Noni Madueke, poor decision making in the final third. And I don't know how to sum him up, but even when he came on, he did not have much to offer. The few times when he went through, one time he falls in the box claiming a foul, it wasn't. Another time he smacks the ball way over the bar when he gets the bit of space. I think another shot was deflected. Then he attempted a cross that was so poor. So it basically came down to that. So, and that's how poor it was. When you look at XG, Arsenal had 1.7, had 1.77. And then Southampton had 1.21. And that's why I was telling you, it's not because Southampton looked so good on the day. No, it's just that Arsenal did not offer much to make it like they were suffocating Southampton. That wasn't the case, So at the end of it all, you had a very, very poor performance, very muted performance, by the way. And for Martin Odegaard, I would sort of excuse him. I would sort of excuse him why he's just returned from a bit of a lengthy injury. He's bound to be a bit rusty. He's not had a lot of playing time. But most of these players who had that bit of ample rest that you had expected to be a bit more fresh did not look like it. Did not look like it. Now, Gabriel Martinelli played with the Brazilian national team. Maybe you cut him. Okay, I don't even want to excuse his performance, but you'd think maybe jet lag took a turn on him and things like that. But that's to try and find excuses for them. Ben White, you've had good minutes with the England national team. You weren't playing that much before the international break. Put in a good performance. He had a very, very poor day. In fact, he was so lucky to end the game without a yellow card. And then, I don't know what's wrong with players or teams. You have an entire 90 minutes to play, for which you keep slacking on, like you have 24 hours to play this game and try to win it. Then, in the dying minutes of the game, when Arsenal win a free kick, Gabriel Martinelli shoves the referee as though to say, get out of the way, you're wasting time. Now, and I do respect, I want to give credit to the referee for keeping his cool, because if I were in his shoes, I'm giving you a red card. You're touching the referee. And guess what? Not to tap him to say something, but literally pushing him out of the way, not in a moment of action in play. For example, let's say if you're driving the ball and suddenly you come into contact with the referee and then you shove him to the side to move on with the play, I would understand that. But this is static ball. We're going for a set piece, So I really, really want to credit the referee for keeping his cool to only dishing him with the yellow card. Otherwise, it could have been worse, at least in my humble opinion. Now, Southampton had only 4 shots on target, and that tells you the sort of story that I was driving at with 3 off target. Arsenal had 7 on target, 6 off target. They were never clinical enough. They had 10 blocked shots. They dominated possession to the tune of 64%, but that possession that they dominated, majority of it was in their half. I kept asking myself, why are they spending a lot of time with the ball between Kepa Arrizabalaga, Gabriel Magalhaes, Mosquera, and Ben White, or even when William Saliba came on, it was still the same story. Then knock it to a Christian Nogard in midfield, and then it was popped back to them. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. You're playing in your own half. Literally, even if I'm the opponent, I'm going to be as cool as a cucumber. I'm going to be as calm as a squirrel. Why? Because you're playing in your own half. That does not impact me. I'm going to wait for you guys to until you cross the center half. And basically, yes, Southampton did the counter press, but they were very selective about it. They were not always committing all full numbers. They would only commit when Arsenal tried this thing where the defender starts the ball and passes it to the goalkeeper, and then he, usually it's Gabriel Magalhaes who starts it to the goalkeeper, then they go right to William Saliba's side. This time around, it was Christian Mosquera in that instance. So they tried to, push the counter press. And it's partly because in their homework, they must have known if it is Kepa Arrizabalaga, he's so poor on the ball, he's poor with this distribution, go and do the counter press. Then you had moments where Kepa Arrizabalaga sort of stops. Typical of what we saw in the Carabao Cup final, he sort of comes closer to the 18 yards box edge and he steps on the top of that ball as if he's waiting for something miraculous to come his way, and which was never going to come, So it's like they did not learn from their defeat against Manchester City. Now, I understand different opponents, different players, perhaps different approach to the game. But let's be honest, not much of it was different. In some moments, they let Arsenal start that play and did not rush to push their numbers forward. And Christian Nongat, we've spent the entire season advocating for you. Now, I do not want to judge him badly based on this one game off because he really, really had a poor game, in my humble opinion. Particularly struggled in progressing the ball and struggled with winning the ball back oftentimes. So you had that. Then he brought on Martin Zubimendi, who, for lack of a better word, looked like the game was so all over the place that he got lost in it, that he barely would have the sort of impact for which he was brought on to have. So at the end of the day, it was just that kind of game. If I had to choose one player that stood out for me in this Arsenal defeat, it was Max Dorman. As simple as that. All the rest, and maybe Victor Gyökeres, because he comes on, does what he's brought on to do, scores his 17th goal of the season, bang, And then they did not create enough for him to try and score the other, because the other attempt he has is a free kick, bangs it in the wall, and, that's just about it. Then you have a couple of moments that are very indecisive from Gabriel Martinelli, This is Pedro says it is Easter, so the Saints had to qualify. Best joke of the year. Happy Easter. Tester of life. Good to have you back on the channel. How have you been? How is the tribe? I'm all right, my brother. How about you? How have you been? It's been a minute since we last saw you on the broadcast, but I hope you've been okay. Happy Easter to you all, by the way, for those of you that are Christians out there. So at the end of the day, that was the nature of the game. Arsenal did not do enough to even put, I felt they did not do enough to send this Southampton side into panic, into scrappy moments, into moments where they were literally sort of hoping that a game takes a stop for a breather. You never felt that sort of pressure, even when Arsenal were dominant on the ball. And by the way, when Martin Odegaard was taken out, again, criticize him all you want because he did not have any better performance than all the others. But again, you felt something had changed, and not for the better, by the way. It wasn't for the better. Because even with him on the pitch, it was still that slow progression of the ball and sort of taking time. You say, I have been a busy man. Happy Easter to you, man. May it be a blessed weekend. Arsenal is not performing. Exactly. Because I think you think they can still win the Premier League. I still think they can, but if they are going to keep giving these sort of performances like we saw against Man City, like we have seen today, then trust me, it's going to be very, very difficult. They're going to have to drag themselves to the finishing line because if they are running, it feels like they are running with weights on their shoulders. That's how it feels like. First of all, we could have a repeat of what happened in around the same period in March April 2023 when they drew against Southampton 3-3. They got knocked out of the UEFA Europa League at the hands of Sporting Lisbon. So this time around, it's the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. That's their next task on Tuesday. Around the same period, they lost to Manchester City. Remember, they have to play Man City in a fortnight at the Etihad Stadium. Man City side who today obliterated Liverpool. Around the same period of time, I think, they drew against, West Ham by 2-2. So this time around, you have to play AFC Bournemouth. next weekend in the Premier League. But that's after, that's after playing away to Sporting Lisbon. So if they keep playing the way they've played in the last two games, trust me, it's going to be very, very hard. And I've explained to you the mathematics of the Premier League title on how Arsenal can lose it, even though it is theirs to lose. So, because for me, the mathematics is simple. If you're Manchester City. Now, when I saw Brad Erling Haaland today score his hat-trick against Liverpool, I sat back and thought to myself, could it be that he's back at just the most opportune time? Because we're talking about a guy whose second part of the season form has been really, really wanting. But today he turned up. He turned up. And he was really, really excellent against Liverpool. So in that excellent performance against Liverpool, you look at it and think to yourself, they go away to Chelsea next. Chelsea, yes, they were exceptional today, but it was against Portfield, a side that are bottom of the championship. So not much. Okay, they deserve their credit, but that's the kind of opponent that they had. So you look at it and think to yourself, if Man City go away to Chelsea and win, that's going to be another huge positive in terms of their confidence, because they came into today's game against Liverpool with all the confidence of winning that Carabao Cup final. And you could see in how they sort of were patient in certain moments of the game. They were patient with the game and then hit when the opportunity arose. So, and they looked really, really impressive. Antoine Semenyo, among the goal scorers, brilliant goal that he does score. Liverpool caught napping, hoping for an offside. Then, so if they win the game against Man City, their next game is the game against Arsenal. Now, imagine they beat Chelsea and beat up against Arsenal. Now, for benefit of doubt or purposes of, being self-sufficient, let's look at it this way, that Arsenal have also won against Bournemouth, but Man City have won those two games. If they win against Arsenal, that means it is down to 6 points with their game in hand against Crystal Palace. They win that, then it is 3 points, and then we still have about how many? Let me see, about 5 games left to play in the season. Now, with only 3 points at the summit of the table, with 5 games left to play, that mathematics is going to be very, very, then it becomes a lean lead. So lean that you're sort of 1 game poor performance away from bringing it down to square of points. So Arsenal ought to find a way of getting their nerves together and play as though the season is just starting. I know that's easier said than done, but at least they're going to need that. Okay. Do you think our injuries had a big impact on the loss today? We need a 4-1. We need 4 wins and to draw 1. Is that the mathematics? Last I checked, Arsenal needed to win 4 games and draw 3 games. That's a total of 15 points. That, because if you win 4, that's 12 points. Because the most Man City can amass, I think, is about 85 points. That's if they win all their remaining games. And Arsenal need to win at least to win 4 and 3 draws to get 85 points. So that's what they need. But remember, the two sides have to face each other. So one, somehow, somewhere, it has to square itself. But I do not think the injuries today, not really, not in my opinion. First of all, you have Kepa Arrizabalaga, who was just poor on the day, by the way. He did not look very comfortable on the ball. Nothing to do with injuries. Ben White, I think he's played enough minutes ever since he returned from injury to be to give you a better performance than he gave you today. Miles Lewis Kelly, he just played with the England under-21s and he looked sharp. I think he provided an assist for Ethan Nwaneri's goal in one of those games. Then you look at Christian Mosquera, was away with the Spanish national team, so no excuse. Gabriel Magalhaes did not have that poor a performance, even though he had been injured during the course of the international break, or at least precautionary. William Saliba came on. He had also been left behind. It's not like they had those poor performances. It's just that they were equally caught by those 1-2 moments in which Arsenal conceded. Christian Norgard was away with the Danish team. Yes, they lost, could not qualify for the World Cup, but he did play. He did feature quite predominantly. Martin Zubimendi featured in one of their games for Spain before returning, but he was a cameo. Kai Havertz was a prominent feature for German. He did score in one of those friendlies, I think, from the penalty spot. So no excuse. Victor Gyökeres came on and looked sharp as he was during the course of international break. Gabriel Martinelli, I do not have any excuse for him. I look at Max Doman was the standout performer for me today. So, and then who else? I'm trying to remember who else. So basically that was it. Noni Madueke, no, it was his decision making that let him down in some moments of his cameo. So I do not think really we can sit down and comfortably blame it on the injuries. Not really. One, first of all, I blame it on the style of play. It's not a very, very pragmatic style of play. It's conservative. And I've spoken about this on multiple occasions. It's conservative in a nature that they seek safety first before, they seek safety more often than they risk trying to win the game. That's what I told you. The ball spends so much time when they are being dominant in possession. The ball spends so much time between the defenders and the goalkeeper, and sometimes the holding midfielders, that you look at them and wonder, are you going to score in the back of your own net? You are looking to score the other side. Why are you spending a lot of time playing in your own half when you need to score on the other side? So that's where I have a challenge with them. And that's for Mikel Arteta to sort out, by the way. Why? Because we have seen Arsenal be pragmatic before. We have seen them play that quick transitional or progressive football before. So the question will be, why are they not doing it now? So that's for Mikel Arteta to sort out. You say, okay, what do you think about Real Madrid? First of all, as a Real Madrid fan, I was really, really let down by that 2-1 loss to Mallorca. But I must be honest and say, Real Madrid have not looked good enough this season. I do not remember watching, and this is not to say that I've watched all Real Madrid games, by the way, but I do not remember watching Real Madrid in a game of football this season, and I felt so comfortable, apart from their 2 games against Manchester City. In the first leg, because they took everybody by surprise. They blew us. They blew us away with that hat-trick from Fede Valverde, and then in the reverse fixture, Bernardo Silva gets a red card so quickly in that game that then we become confident that regardless of what happens, we are going through. That's it. But when I look at majority of the games, they've been very unconvincing performances. Go back to the victory against Osasuna. Go back to the 3-2 victory against Atletico de Madrid. It's not because it was a very convincing performance, by the way. Yes, they looked very lively, they were very attacking, but defensively, they were not convincing. It looked like it looked like a basketball game where scoring is not that easy. You get sort of both teams going back and forth at each other. That's how it felt like. You go back to the 1-0 loss in the UEFA Champions League stage against Liverpool. I mean, it was Thibaut Courtois that was the difference in that game. So, I mean, it's that poor. And guess what? Real Madrid lost today. Barcelona have found a way to win. And now they are 7 points clear of Real Madrid. And that is the thing that I've been seeing literally about that Real Madrid needed to avoid that, because by the time we get to match day 35 of La Liga, which will be the El Clasico, they would have wanted that gap to be smaller or to stay at 4 points. But now it is 7. So that means Barcelona have the luxury of losing 2 games and still not worry about being caught by Real Madrid. And I do not think that's a good position to be in. You remember during Xabi Alonso, they were not losing so many games. In fact, they were winning majority until that run where they had about 3 consecutive draws or something and lost another. For me, that period had had sort of felt like it was a long time coming. Why? Because it simply meant that it simply validated what I had long thought throughout the season, that, yeah, we are winning games, but we're not looking good enough. And I embraced that because I knew it's Xabi Alonso. He's new in the job. He's trying to build something. And these players are trying to adapt to all his demands and how he wants them to play. So I took that in. Under Alvaro Arbeloa, they've looked slightly different. There's some games that you've seen some convincing performances, but today wasn't one of those. And yes, he rested some of the sharp guns. They had to come off the bench. Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Junior. But even when they came on, they never had that game in their stride. They get the equalizer and then lapse in concentration, bang, it's 2-1. Very late on in the game. So thank you so much, Maslow H7. I don't know where you're joining us from. I don't know what team you do support, but if you don't mind, please like the broadcast and also consider subscribing to the channel. Let us know where you're joining us from and what team do you support. Tester of life, you had another, but I will still support them. Either way, you ought to support your team regardless of what happens to it. Liverpool fans will have to wake up on Tuesday and support Liverpool, because despite of the obliteration that Manchester City treated them to, Maslow says, I support Real Madrid. After Madrid and Bayern make a live stream, it will be after Madrid and Bayern make a live stream about it. So we are live every single day of the week at 11 p.m. Unfortunately, today we came 1 hour late at midnight because it's 40 minutes past the hour of 6 a.m. Sorry, not 6 a.m., 12 a.m. That's midnight here in Uganda. So every single day, Monday to Sunday, we are live. But tomorrow we may not do tomorrow's broadcast. Guys, it's Easter. Give me a break. Anyways, so every single day at 11 p.m. we do come live. So rest assured, after maybe even before, during maybe at halftime or somewhere, we'll do come live. Provided all factors are kept constant. And by that I mean having power, which means having Wi-Fi. Okay. You say after Madrid, I'm busy. Okay. Same, Real Madrid are the best. Yeah, I'll be there. Okay, thanks, Maslow. Now, we'll still support them against Bayern Munich. Now, that's the thing about football. Let me tell you what. I've seen fans give up on their teams today, and tomorrow they are back at them. I've seen them give up on their teams for a month, some for even half a season, but still they end up back in the same place. And it's not the giving up of, I don't even want to know what's happening. You know, the kind of giving up where you always sort of peeping, looking over your shoulder, peeping through the ventilation or the window just to see how they performed, what is the result at least. So in other words, you never really give up on your team. Wait, one question. Do you think Mbappe is a problem in the team? No. I do not think that the club's top scorer is a problem. Why would I think that? I do not think it's a problem. First of all, too many injuries. When you without Thibaut Courtois, that's going to cost you. Why? Because sometimes Thibaut Courtois has decided games, and we know that. And he's done that for year in, year out. Two, sometimes even though Alvaro Carreras was returning, Alexander Trent-Arnold at right back, the Rudigers in there, sometimes you feel that it's just a wanting performance from some of those players. You know, injuries overall have not been very kind to Real Madrid this season, but I wouldn't want to entirely blame their shortfalls through that. Have you seen the game today? Yeah. I did follow the game. I did not watch the first half. I caught the second half. Where was I during the first half? I don't remember, but it was the second half that I was following up on. But I don't want to think. Sorry, the players that were arrested were Vinicius Junior, key of them, and Jude Bellingham, which was sort of understandable because you have Real Madrid to play. So yes, he can do better. I understand that. I understand him missing a chance or two. I understand that bit because it does happen to every player. I do not think there is a single player that has a 100% performances game in, game out for an entirety of the season. So I sort of understand that bit. But with Kylian Mbappe, create the chances and he'll score the goals. It doesn't mean that you won't miss some chances. It does happen to any player. And I remember some point when Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe sort of sparked into life and they were carrying Real Madrid forward. They were really carrying Real Madrid forward. Alvaro Carreras has been one of the standout performers in Real Madrid colors this season, and he's just returned from injury. So, but Dean Howson, Chouameni, Camavinga in that midfield, Manuel Angelo, Brahim Diaz, he did not turn up. Let's be honest, Brahim Diaz did not turn up. Okay, who should Florentino Perez sign this summer? That's not an easy question. It's a difficult one. I'll say this. First of all, I think Real Madrid needs some clearance sale. I'm starting to feel that there's a bit of dead wood in that squad, in my humble opinion. You have to look at Eder Militao is too injury prone these days, oftentimes injured. He's a very good defender. I like him, but he's oftentimes injured. Dani Carvajal is bound to leave, so you need another right back to compete favorably with Alexander Trent-Arnold. Yes, they signed Dean Howson, but David Alaba, he's always injured. Two of those Madrid centre backs ought to leave. Raul Asensio is below par. Now, of course, too many changes wouldn't help, but at least Raul Asensio is very unconvincing many at times in his own performances. So they need a right back. You need a left back, by the way, because you have Fran Garcia and Alvaro Carreras, but Ferland Mendy has to leave. So this is about squad building. So it is up to Real Madrid to decide, okay, Alvaro Carreras is number one, who is number two? Are you keeping Fran Garcia as is, or are you going to keep waiting for Ferland Mendy to keep returning? Then that midfield, Dani Ceballos. Get rid of Dani Ceballos. He's a squad player, but even as a squad player, he rarely delivers. Then you have Eduardo Camavinga and Chouameni. I said get rid at least one of those and then get a potent replacement. And that's why Real Madrid have been linked with a strong move for Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante from Manchester City. Then you look at Rodrigo Goes. Real Madrid need to part ways with Rodrigo Goes, in my humble opinion. And if they can, Brahim Diaz, they need to find another 10. We keep Adagula and part ways with Brahim Diaz. Goncalo Ramos had a good summer in the FIFA Club World Cup, but as soon as Xabi Alonso left, you thought his playtime was always going to be very limited. So I feel like there's a lot of players that they need in terms of building a stronger squad. When was the last time Rodrigo Goes had a good season at Real Madrid? Unfortunately for him, this season has ended with injury. He suffered that knee injury that he's even ruled out for the World Cup. So for me, I feel a lot of those players need to be swapped out. Endrick could play right. I think you could play Endrick as a target man, because you would still have Kylian Mbappe being effective coming off the. Now that's the unfortunate bit about Real Madrid. They have so many right-footed wingers / forwards. Who is the lefter that comes off the right wing? All these Mbappe, Vinicius, even Rodrigo Goes, they want to drift off the left and coming from that side. So, Franco Mastratuano, he's still a youngster. We cannot ask too much of him. So those gaps need to be to be filled. Look at the performance, for example, of Bayern Munich. Hurricane has really delivered this season. Then you've had Tessa says, "Good night, tribe. You must enjoy the rest of the night. Everyone else watching, have a great night, bro. A great night too. Thank you so much, Testa of Life. It's been a pleasure having you back after a bit of a while of not being here with us. So, but for Real Madrid, they need to build a much stronger squad. Look at Bayern Munich. Hurricane, they have Nicolas Jackson in there. You have a Serge Gnabry, a Luis Diaz, a Michael Olise, and these are players that have been delivering. Now, Real Madrid have good players, but some of those players are not delivering. They are not coming good when called upon into action. I understand Dani Ceballos is currently been down through injury, but reflect on his entire season and how many times I'm going to remember he delivered. So Rodrigo Goes, like I said, I do not remember. The last time he had a good season, I think, was back in 2023, 2024, when Real Madrid were winning the Champions League. So it's basically that. Vinicius Jr. this season has been wanting. When you go back to 2024, again, after that 2023-2024 season, he was high in contention for the Ballon d'Or. But in last season and this season, you didn't bring him close. Unless, of course, Real Madrid eventually win the Champions League and then somehow Brazil win the World Cup, that you would sort of think about him. But as things stand, you wouldn't think about him. If, for example, let's say Real Madrid were to win the World Cup, if Real Madrid were to win the UEFA Champions League and then Brazil meet France in the finals, and then Brazil win it, you'd still put Kylian Mbappe above Vinicius Jr. in winning the Ballon d'Or. Even if Vinicius Jr. were to score the winning goal in the final, So that's how his performance could be interpreted, or I could look at it. You say, I'm a bit tired. I'll join tomorrow's live stream. Everyone have a good night and a day tomorrow. Thank you so much, Maslow, for having been part of this fruitful discussion. I hope you've subscribed to the channel. Now, okay. Thank you guys for your feedback. I know we sort of hoped we hoped out of the Arsenal game and into Real Madrid affairs, but usually, as much as I have topics to take you guys through, because I value your feedback, we must discuss the things that you put on table. So that's how the conversation led where it led. But to conclude on Arsenal Southampton, Arsenal out, the story closed. Performance wanting. Now, Liverpool got destroyed by Manchester City earlier on today. I mean, I've seen a number of poor performances from Liverpool this season. And trust me, today's performance is definitely one of those. They just did not look anywhere good enough. They had a penalty, which was missed by Mohamed Salah. Very, very unfortunate. By the way, I must acknowledge he was unfortunate to miss the penalty, but it's not like he was having a great performance. Okay. Oxy Smells says, you laugh. Hi, Oxy. So Pep Guardiola was in the stands. I think he was serving his second match ban. And Pep Linders was on the touchline against a side for which he was a deputy to Jurgen Klopp for quite some time. Okay. Corner FC time. Which club do you support? I support Barca. Oh, you support Barcelona? I do support Real Madrid. I do support Arsenal, the Uganda Cranes, and the Brazil national team. So those are teams that I support, or clubs in terms of club and country. But I love football. Football is first love. So for me, supporting these clubs is a consequence of my love for football. Anyways, back to the topic. Of course, they had 1-2 missed chances here and there. For example, Hugo Ekitike in the first half, He had the ball fall in sort of his pathway, and he could not keep that on target. Unfortunately for him, so it was what it was. Then they go on the other side and concede a penalty for a foul against, was it O'Reilly? Yes, Virgil van Dijk against Nico O'Reilly. I mean, there was no denying that. Earlier on, they had a penalty call. I think, what was it against? I forget the Man City player. So then Brad Erling Haaland stepped up, converted the penalty. Then they allowed the cross from Antoine Semenyo. Brad Erling Haaland got the better of Ibrahim Konate in terms of rising in the air and heads that into the back of the net. And yeah, damn, I feel bad you got knocked out. I mean, that's football. That's the nature of it. That's the nature of it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And when you lose, it's agonizing. When you win, it's jubilations. So, I mean, when you watch the second goal, when you watch that second goal from Manchester City, Milos Kerkez gets done by Ryan Cherki, who passes the ball to Antoine Semenyo. Virgil van Dijk is slow in trying to close him down to prevent the cross from coming in. And at the center of it, of the 18 yards box, you have Brad Erling Haaland against Ibrahim Konate. I'm talking about Arsenal. Okay. Yeah. I understand that bit. So yeah, but thanks for your kindness. So you have Brad Erling Haaland against Ibrahim Konate. Now, 1v1, Brad Erling Haaland versus Ibrahim Konate. I think Haaland is going to come out on top at least 6 out of 10 times. And given the kind of season that Ibrahim Konate has had thus far, you'd say that number goes to 7 or even 8 out of 10 times. And it was simply that. He never got across Haaland. And this is what I keep saying about defenders. If a ball is coming in, it's a cross. You must be in front of the striker. Because when you're in front of him, you give yourself a chance. As a defender, I will understand if you jump and you do not get to the ball. In terms of the flight of the ball is way beyond you. You tried. And then luckily it falls to the opponent. I understand that bit. But the moment you put yourself behind the attacker, the striker, oftentimes you're going to miss out on that. You're left with either pushing him or nudging him to try and have him miss or have a bad contact on the ball that then they miss the chance. So basically that's what happened. And there's nothing Georgie Mamadashvili could do about that. So Haaland scores and it's 2-0. And we go into halftime with that 2-0 lead for Manchester City. So again, it was always bound to be difficult once it went 2-0. And then very early on in the second half, and we're talking about the 49th minute, Liverpool are caught napping. I mean, when I say caught napping, the Liverpool backline slept as Antoine Semenyo makes the run through. And he simply has to glance at the goalkeeper where he is. And Ryan Cherki, again, very, very sleek in the way he passes that ball. And because those Liverpool defenders were left arms up, hoping for an offside, which did not come. Beautiful take of the goal. And, it was too, it was sort of, it was 3-0 very early in the second half. Then Mo Salah today, I mean, he forced James Trafford into a save. That was around the 52nd minute of the game. Then he had another opportunity where he delays to take the shot. And I think this was in the first half. He takes an extra touch, and by the time he strikes the ball, Kushanov is there to intercept, So Then shortly after that, you have Jamie Doku dancing through them, Nico O'Reilly with the cutback, and brought Erling Haaland. And this is as early as the 57th minute of the game. There was no way, there's no coming back from that. Liverpool lacked desire, they lacked fight, they lacked grit, they lacked confidence, they lacked energy. Now, similar to what I saw with Arsenal, Liverpool played like a team that had played 2 days ago. That's what it felt like. And yet, we are from the international break. Now, I know the first games after the international break are often unpredictable or difficult, but they just never got going. You know? Maybe Manchester City were too good, that we deserve to give Manchester City a little bit more credit than we are according them. Now, for Mo Salah to miss the penalty, it wasn't a bad penalty. James Trafford was really, really good. He saves the penalty. You know, he really, really did good in saving that penalty. And basically, that was the evening for Liverpool. You never felt at any one point that they were getting their stride in the game. And the numbers tell you just as much. Manchester City had a 2.5 goal XG compared to Liverpool's 1.43. 7 shots on target compared to Liverpool's 5, 2 off target for Man City and 3 off target for Liverpool. Liverpool edging possession slightly by 51% compared to 49% of Manchester City. In other words, possession-wise, it looked 50-50. But when it mattered the most, Manchester City were effective on the other side. They took their chances. They buried those chances. You know? So, and that was the difference. You remember the Carabao Cup final between Manchester City and Arsenal? The difference was in how effective Manchester City were with the chances they created, because they had only 2 attempts on target in that game. On the ball, Man City really looked good. But Arsenal had done so well in defending against them that they had denied them goal-scoring opportunities. And you all have perhaps even an even fresher memory than I of that final. Why? First goal, Kepa Arrizabalaga is to blame. Second goal, Bukayo Saka literally ball watches Nico O'Reilly. You know, so those lapses in concentration are what cost Arsenal. This time around, Manchester City was simply again very effective with what they did. And like I said, these are 2 big victories for Manchester City. You beat Arsenal in the cup final, you beat Liverpool in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. That's the kind of confidence that you need going into the final stretch of the season. And I did a video on this channel, guys. You can go ahead and check it out. When I was talking about Manchester City's exit from the Champions League, that it was going to turn out to be a blessing in disguise. And I remember saying this in the preview to Man City's game against Liverpool, that Manchester City did not have anything to worry about. Really, Liverpool were going to play thinking, we have a Champions League game to play on Tuesday against PSG. And we're talking about a PSG side that is really, really good. The same side that knocked them out of the UEFA Champions League last season at the round of 16. So, you know, okay. Akona FC says, Liverpool bringing in all these players to look like this is a disgrace. You even got Isak reported to want to leave. Who is the GOAT football player? That's Sad Imran. Sad Imran, who is the GOAT. Hi Sad, where are you joining us from, Sad? And Kona FC time, where are you joining us from? Do let me know. Okay, and now, the greatest of all times. Now, that's a very difficult question for me to answer. I'll tell you my favorite player of all time. That's Ronaldinho Gaucho. He's my favorite of all time, really. So all the others, I appreciate them for the greatness they are. But for me, my favorite, as a personal favorite, is Ronaldinho. When it comes to the greatest of all time, ultimately, I can't really tell you. I did not watch much of Pele, apart from the clips you'll find online, just pretty much as anybody within my age bracket. I did not watch enough of Diego Armando Maradona to appreciate him for what he was. The likes of Gary Lineker, the ones that tell us more about him, and those that got the chance to watch him live. Now, in our modern day times or in recent past, I'll talk about people like Lionel Messi. I liked R9 really. So we'll talk about the Cristiano Ronaldos. So I cannot really, for me personally, pick for you. That's why I've given you my favorite of all time. Kona FC, you say, I mean, Liverpool got a face PSG side who cooked Chelsea 8-3 on aggregate. Exactly. So they played this game, really thinking about that game. And we had a Liverpool side that was fully fledged in terms of their starting lineup. You know, it's not like they brought their B side that got obliterated. And again, I said this in the preview that with Alson Ramsey-Baker absent through injury, Liverpool were going to miss a very, very key player. They're going to be missing a very, very key player because Alson Ramsey-Baker will help you decide some moments in the game. He will help you keep you in the game. He may not win you the game because you have to do the rest of the work, but at least he will fight to keep you in the game. So when Manchester City got knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, I did a video. This was around the 19th of March. Say the title is, could Manchester City's UEFA Champions League exit be a blessing in disguise in the Premier League title race? So in that video, I focused on the Premier League title race because that's where my school of argument was, and I think that was before we found that. I think it was before we learned of who the opponents for the FA Cup quarterfinals were going to be. So for me, in a way, this is beginning to play out. It's beginning to play out in the sense of you could see that Manchester City played with all their energy, but also without so much as to think about of what's coming next, with that freedom. Really, Liverpool, they literally played as though they had somebody speaking in their ear. You have PSG coming. It's like they were playing to reserve a bit of energy. Again, to what end? And like I said, they played with their good team: Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, Milos Kerkez at left back, Ryan Gravenberch, Florian Wirtz, Dominic Szoboszlai, Hugo Ekitike, Mohamed Salah. And I've said this before, I do not appreciate Dominic Szoboszlai as a 10. I prefer him as an 8. As a 10, he's never good. He's not good enough for me. As an 8, brilliant. As a 10, no. So there's that. But anyway, it's just one man's opinion, So, but perhaps I can paste for you the link in the description. Sorry, the link in the comment section, in case any of you wants to go and watch after the broadcast about that topic where I talk about Manchester City's UEFA Champions League exit, whether it could turn out to be a blessing in disguise for Manchester City. And the way they played today is evident that that exit is a blessing in disguise. The way they played the Carabao Cup final is a testament of that. Nothing for to think about. Again, something happened with Arsenal in a way. You could, at least I could argue the case that they played in part as though they were trying to reserve energy for what's to come in the UEFA Champions League. So, oh, come on. Okay, I think I did not paste it for you guys the right way. I need to remove it and do it again. Indulge me kindly. Okay. Yes, it should be like that. Okay, so that's it. That's the link. In case you guys, in case any of you wants to go and check out the video after this. Who is your bag on the UEFA Champions League? Mine is Bayern Munich. Wow. Okay. I've said this before. My favorites to win the UEFA Champions League, and this was prior to this weekend, were Bayern Munich in no particular order, by the way. But at least Bayern Munich is one of those. Real Madrid, Arsenal, Barcelona, Liverpool. in that order. Those are the sides that I tipped. But the other three, okay, the top three are in sort of the topmost. So the reason as why I talked about Liverpool is because of their pedigree, the competition. Now, the beauty about this is that Real Madrid and Bayern Munich are going to face each other at the quarterfinals, like we already know. So, in other words, there's no world where those two meet in the final. In other words, one of the favorites is going to be knocked out at the quarterfinals. Then, when it comes to Liverpool, they have a really, really tough hurdle. Even if they go past PSG, again, they will have to meet either of Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So again, that reduces. So, and then when it comes to this side of Barcelona, it's only Arsenal and Barcelona that I think are among the favorites. Why do I think about Barcelona? They are Barcelona. They've won it at least 5 times, even though they've not won it in a decade. 2, Arsenal have never won it. They've looked brilliant in the Champions League, apart from the first leg they played against Bayer Leverkusen, by the way. But they've never won it. I do not have much confidence in them going on to win it because they've never won it. That's simply that. It's not about how they play. It's not about which opponent they face. It's that. Because when you've never won it, it's always very, very difficult. The first time of winning it is very, very difficult. Look at how many years it took PSG to clinch that Champions League title. For how long and how much they wanted it. Going all the way to signing players like Lionel Messi, Ramos, Ibrahimovic, Edson Cavani, Angelo Di Maria, Neymar, Santos Jr. Talk about all the elite talent in the world. Javier Pastore, Julian Draxler, all the cream de la cream. Kylian Mbappe, Thiago Silva. Remember all of them. But look how long it took them to eventually win it. So, because Arsenal have never won it, that's why I put them in the top 3, but I cannot put them in the top 2. For simply that. I don't think a knockout is a blessing in disguise. If you're facing these teams and a final, you're going to have to put your hardest effort in. If Barca does not get a striker, I don't see us going past Bayern Munich. Arsenal, because Varane is too at finishing and Lewandowski is getting older. I don't know, when you talk about getting a striker, maybe you're meaning in terms of next season because there's not much Barcelona can do about that in the current season. The thing about Barcelona is that because their attack is so good, they score so many goals, is where you often think to yourself, they are capable of outscoring an opponent. And usually that's the tactic that they sort of look to talk about. Now, when I talk about Manchester City is being knocked out in the UEFA Champions League, turning to be a blessing in disguise, is this. When you have the kind of squad that they have, the kind of team that they have, first of all, you have this, in that you have a lesser competition to worry about. It's not what they would have wanted. No, they would have wanted to still be in the Champions League. But in terms of the Premier League title race, look at this way. Arsenal are going to play the reverse fixture against Sporting Lisbon, regardless of the result. And whatever the result will be, it will also mean something going into that game on April the 19th. So Arsenal will have played a midweek game before going away to Man City. Really, Man City will have been rested all week, because here's the chronology of events. Both sides are played this weekend. Arsenal are out of the FA Cup. Manchester City are still in it. They're going to the semi-finals. We do not know, will they be drawn against Chelsea or whoever comes through between Leeds United and West Ham, or Southampton. Then you have next weekend. Now, Arsenal are going to go away to Portugal and play in the UEFA Champions League. Then you have next weekend, they play at home in the early kickoff against FC Bournemouth. Now, early kickoff games I hate early kickoff games, by the way. Usually, they're very, very difficult for big teams. I do not know the logic about it. Regardless of whether a team has played in midweek or otherwise, the big team, usually they find it hard to win early kickoff games. And those are games of, I think, 2:30 p.m., 3:30 p.m. And I think this one will come at about, should be at around 2:30 p.m., maybe, or 3:30 p.m., around that period. At least I do think to myself, for match day 32, it will be 2:30 p.m. But when you said 2:30 p.m., that's East African time. Over there, it's going to be midday at the Emirates Stadium. Scorching sun, whatever the weather will be. So then, after that, they have the reverse fixture against Sporting Lisbon the subsequent week on Wednesday. And with that, then you have, then you go away to Manchester City. So in other words, Man City will play away to Chelsea. That's on the weekend, and then wait to play Arsenal next. So where it becomes a blessing in disguise is that in between the Chelsea game and the Arsenal game, they have nothing to worry about in the middle of the week. They'll have been well rested. They'll have had all the time to go through whatever drills and analyzing the game and, refining their approach as much as you can have. 2, it's going to be played like a final for Man City. Now, it must be played like a final for Arsenal too, but a final that Manchester City that will be more desperate to win than Arsenal would be. Why? Because it's Man City chasing Arsenal, not Arsenal chasing Man City. Arsenal want to win it, or at least get a point out of it, to sort of stay in a strong position in terms of the summit of the table. But Man City know that if we beat Arsenal, and that big if is dependent on the result they get against Chelsea. First of all, I think Man City are going to beat Chelsea. That's the sort of feeling I have when I look at these two performances that they managed to put on board against Arsenal and against Liverpool. I have that feeling that they're going to beat up against Chelsea. So then you go up against Arsenal. So that's where it becomes a blessing in disguise. Fewer games left to play, more time to concentrate on chasing your opponent down. Now we know that Arsenal are already playing under pressure. They want to get it over the line. If there was a world where they could play for tragedy to strike and the season is cut short here and say that was the end of the season, we cannot continue any further, we have to crown a champion, they will take that opportunity. Unfortunately for them, it doesn't work that way. But they have a lot of pressure weighing on their shoulders. Those players keep talking themselves into saying, we'll keep fighting, we'll get it over the line, we'll be confident, be positive, be this. But what they do on the pitch, how they apply themselves on the pitch, does not give you confidence as an Arsenal fan. So that's basically it. Michael Matov says, hi. Hi, Michael. Good to have you on the broadcast. So basically, that's what it is when I talk about the blessing in this case for Man City in this title race. It's not having to worry about Champions League games. They would rather be in the Champions League, but because they're not there, they have had to cut their losses and move on. So that gives them a bit of leg room, And in that video, and then I think I talked about, there's also another video on the channel where I talk about my worries about Arsenal for the remainder of the season, where we talk about fatigue, we talk about injuries, and their inability to see out games or see off opponents, to be sort of decisive, to be that team that gives you the confidence. Again, I was in a forum today and somebody was saying the last time they saw Arsenal play really, really well or convincingly or win convincingly was the game against Tottenham Hotspur. And that was the 4-1 victory. I mean, that feels like ages ago. So basically you have that. Anyways, guys, let's move on. So Liverpool, that's how Liverpool got destroyed by Manchester City. 4-0 out of the FA Cup. And by the way, another missed opportunity for Arne Slot to win a piece of silverware this season. Now, I made this, I'm of this speculation or view or school of thought that if PSG knock out Liverpool out of the Champions League, then Arne Slot's future at the club may be in tatters. Liverpool are not known to be a sacking club for managers, because the last time they sacked a manager, you have to go back to 2015, October, when they part ways with either October or September, when they part ways with Brendan Rodgers. But given how well they have invested in this team, and even though, to be fair to Arne Slot, he's had to deal with inefficiencies in their midfield in terms of lack of numbers as well as defensively. But even with the core of his team, sometimes his team's performances have been far wanting. So I envision a world where Liverpool finish the season trophyless. They are the reigning champions in the Premier League. They've lost, I think, their 15th game of the season today against Man City, most probably. Because let's see, they lost in the Champions League twice. They've lost 10 in the league. They lost to Southampton in the Carabao Cup. So they've lost to Man City. Those are 12 games. In the Champions League, they lost to Galatasaray twice. That's 15. What's the other game that they lost? I'm trying to remember. In the Champions League, during the league phase, did they lose any other game other than losing to Galatasaray? I don't think so, by the way, because they beat Atletico, they beat Real Madrid, they beat Karabakh. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, about 15 losses already. So, do you have a pick for the World Cup? France team should be illegal. A pick for the World Cup. Okay, let's get to the pick for the World Cup in a bit. So yeah, I feel for Arne Slot's future. I feel like it could be really, really in question. Should he finish the season trophyless, which is looking very much likely? So if they get knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, and then they have a fight in the top 4 race or in the top 5 race finish, he still has that fight. Remember, he has to compete for that with Chelsea. Of course, Aston Villa are in that mix with Man United by extension, who are a third. So there's that mix there, and you have teams that are really, really close to those some of those teams. I think teams like Brentford are in there in the mix. Brighton, Everton, not Brighton actually. It's Everton and Brentford. Those two are in there, around 46 points, and Liverpool have 49 points. So those are only 3 points adrift. So there's that. So imagine a world where Liverpool are knocked out of the Champions League and then do not qualify for the Champions League next season. Where do you think that leaves Arne Slot? That's why I think his job could be in tatters. Now, before we get to Corner FC's question about the World Cup, allow me to talk about the Barcelona Atletico de Madrid game. First of all, when I looked at those starting 11s, I felt, I don't know, I felt like both teams were being intent on reserving some of their key players for the Champions League game. Now, remember, Atletico de Madrid are going to have to play Barcelona 3 times, and the reverse is true, in a space of 2 weeks, basically, you know. Excuse me. So, you play in the Spanish La Liga. They've lost, by the way, that implies Atletico de Madrid have lost to Barcelona, home and away. I think the first leg ended 3-1 in victory for Barcelona. Then, the two have already met in the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, for which Barcelona lost by 4-0 at the Riyadh Air Stadium, and then won the reverse fixture by 3-0 and got knocked out. Now, these two have scores to settle in the UEFA Champions League, and those scores that they have to settle are as soon as Wednesday next week. I do not think it's going to be that simple, not for either side. But when I saw those starting 11s, I thought to myself, I saw Eric Garcia in midfield for Barcelona alongside Pedri and Fermin Lopez. And I thought to myself, Dani Olmo, Marcus Rashford, Lamine Yamal, I know Rafinha is out through injury, but I was thinking to myself, how come Lewandowski is not starting? Where's Ferran Torres? You know? And then I looked at the back line. Of course, you do not expect much different. Rio Dandy says London is always blue. Rio Dandy must be a Chelsea fan. Congratulations upon your victory against Portville. We'll discuss that in a bit. So I looked at that and said, Joao Cancelo, Gerardo Martin, Pau Kubasi, Ronald Araujo in the absence of Jules Koundé, fine. But that midfield looked a bit, wanting. Now, I partly understand that because, in a way, Frankie de Jong is still out through injury. And Gavi was just returning from injury. So same applies for the likes of Jules Koundé. But usually, we've had Marc Beno starting alongside Pedri in the absence of Frankie de Jong. As a Barcelona fan, you'd understand how Ferran is. I mean, I understand, but he's between the two, in terms of leading the lines, between him and Marcus Rashford, it's often been Ferran Torres. So, anyways, at the end of the day, it was once Gleno Simeone scores and it's 1-0, and this is in the 39th minute, and then only 3 minutes later, Marcus Rashford responds, for which, by the way, Musso should have saved that ball. I mean, it goes through between his legs. Jesus Christ. It looked bad on the goalkeeper. But anyways, once it went 1-1, the game was still okay. But when the red card comes for Nico Gonzalez, it felt like a deflated balloon. In a way, the game lost that bit of steam. And for the first time, in as long as I can remember, as far as this season is concerned, I saw Atletico de Madrid retreat and defend, look very disciplined in terms of defending than I haven't seen them in the recent past. When I was doing the preview for this game, I mentioned something to do with Diego Simeone struggling to strike a balance between his offensive play and defensive play ever since he switched from being that overly conservative kind of, manager. When they defend so well on a day, their offense is so poor. And the reverse is oftentimes true. But once they got that red card, they fought better in terms of defending, at least today. And you could see that it took an 85th minute call through Robert Lewandowski to get the better of them. In fact, 87th minute for them to lose the game. And there was it Gerard Martin? There was that red card that had been given to him that was overturned following a VAR review. He clearly gets the ball, but I felt that tackle on whose ankle was it? I'm trying to remember whose ankle it was. It looked really, really ugly, by the way. It looked ugly. So you say Ferran got pressed, but when it's one on one, or finding a goal from an open net, he's basically a new player. Yamal could have more assists than Olise. I understand that. Of course, he's sort of a false nine. He plays as a false nine because traditionally he comes as a winger, player that comes off the wing or play in the sort of number 10 role, kind of. So he's not the kind of target man that you have in the edging line of Robert Lewandowski. So the two are never the same. So I understand where you're coming from with that. But, today is one of those days where Barcelona will look at themselves and say, not a great performance, but we got the win anyway. And that's all that matters. Yes, they did create chances, but there were not that many chances of the Barcelona that I know. Yes, 8 shots on target compared to 2 for Atletico de Madrid, who had an XG of only 0.9 compared to Barcelona's 2.2. sort of expected for a team that had to play for an entire half with a numerical advantage. So you expected that. But when the game was still 11 on 11, you felt like it was bound to cancel. The two teams were bound to cancel each other out. In other words, it looked more destined for a draw than not. All right. I'm head out. Good day. Thank you so much, Corner FC Time. Thank you so much. Hope you've liked this broadcast and you have subscribed so that we can catch you next time. Unfortunately, today you missed a fellow Barcelona fan, but if you can go through those comment section, there's somebody who calls himself Pedri. You'll see Pedri 8. You'll see him is equally very passionate Barcelona fan who joins us from Spain. So anyways, Barcelona will be pleased with all the 3 points because of what it implies on the table, that they are now 7 points clear of Real Madrid with 8 games left to play. And that was my worry going into the weekend, that Real Madrid had a stubborn Mallorca, which they lost against by 2-1, in very poor fashion. So it is what it is. Ali says, how are you doing today, bro? Even better after watching Arsenal getting scanned. I mean, first of all, of course I felt bad that Arsenal lost, but it is what it is. When I watch Arsenal lose, and for example, the manner in which they lost today, I watch it from a perspective of, I understand how they've lost the game, and I know why they've lost the game, that I'm quick to move off of it. It's not because I do not care about it, but I'm quick to move off of it. So very bad result, by the way. So anyways, so that's the result for Barcelona. Let's move on. Moving on, let's go to, Connor is left before we responded to his question, but I'll respond to it anyway. He asked about the World Cup, saying who are the favorites, and he said the first team should be illegal. Now, first of all, for the World Cup, I would say, I'll say, and this is in no particular order. I'll say Spain, I'll say Portugal, I'll say France, I'll say England. Those are my favorites to win the World Cup. Pitch VFX says, bro, where did you get that jersey? Oh, I bought it. I bought it in Uganda. This, how many years ago? It's been what? This is more than 3 years ago, almost 4, perhaps. I love this Ajax jersey, and I remember, people steal my jerseys. Somebody took my pink jersey for Arsenal. Somebody took my blue jersey for Real Madrid. People end up taking my jerseys. So I love this jersey so much because apparently the stripes were inspired by the Jamaican flag or something. But Pitch, good to have you on the broadcast. It's my first time seeing you here, so allow me welcome you to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name, in case you're wondering. So kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel so that you can help us continue to grow. Thank you. Okay, you say, bro, my idol is Mbappe. He's gonna win the World Cup. You wish. Anyway, France has played to a World Cup finals, and it's for a reason. Real Dandy says Arsenal bottlers. Well, that's not going to go away until Arsenal actually win a major piece of silverware, and particularly the Premier League title. Why? Because particularly this being the 3rd season out of the four, this being inclusive, they've had leads at the summit of the table. So until they cross that line and actually win it, there's going to be shivers down Arsenal fans' spines. They're going to be called bottlers. They're going to be called all sorts of things. And the onus is on them to get it over the line, but also the pressure is on them to get it over the line. If you want to know how important or how desperate or the kind of pressure that they are under, if you want to understand the sort of psychological situation or headspace in which that team must be in internally, just go back and watch Mikana Cheta in their 2-0 victory against Everton on the touchline. Just go and watch his moments. You'll understand the amount of pressure, that they're going to be under. They got out of the FA Cup against Southampton, yeah, and this is the same Southampton side that knocked them out of the FA back in 2021, I think. That was around the fourth round. So for a team that has been so good this season, I must be honest, I do not think there's many people, if any, that had expected that they were going to get knocked out. Forget the opponent fans who sort of take pleasure in Arsenal losing in terms of the banter, sort of, let's say Man United fans, Chelsea fans, Tottenham fans, that kind of thing. Outside those, I don't think there's many that must have thought, look, hold on a minute. Southampton are going to knock out Arsenal. In the 2020-2021 Premier League season, Southampton knocked out Arsenal, beating them by 1-0 at St. Mary's Stadium out of the FA Cup. So, Real says Nigeria not playing in the World Cup is insane. I mean, they did not qualify. For me, qualifying for a final tournament is on merit. There's no window through it. Now, of course, there's an expectation that they should be in the World Cup, but they did not do well enough to get there. They got knocked out by DRC Congo. And by that, I was supporting DRC Congo because DRC Congo are under the charges of Sebastian Dosabre, the former Ghana Cranes manager or head coach. So he's a guy that I really, really like, that French guy. So similar, like Italy, Gennaro Gattuso keeps complaining about how it's not unfair, Africa having these many slots. It's not fair. Sweden had to go through the window because Sweden did not win a single game in their group stage for the qualifications. Now, Italy finished second in their group behind Norway with about 18 points, and they had to go through the playoffs. How Sweden got to the playoffs was for a rule that pre-qualifies certain teams from their performances in the UEFA Nations League to get into the playoffs. Now, it's not like Sweden were in Italy's path. Sweden took care of their business. They beat Ukraine, they beat Poland. They're into the finals of the World Cup. Really, Gennaro Gattuso is complaining about the mechanisms. Those Italy players celebrated when Wales were knocked out at the hands of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Why? Perhaps deep down inside, maybe they thought they were going to have a lesser of an opponent, for which it was right. But nobody had anticipated that Alessandro Bastoni was going to come and get a red card towards the end of the first half in that one, and then put them at a numerical disadvantage, which cost them the game. So it is what it is. Is David Alaba leaving Real Madrid? He's one of those that I think should be leaving. Why? He's too injury prone. He's never available to help the team. Dani Carvajal, David Alaba, one of Raul Asensio, and Eder Militao, one of them should leave. Then that midfield, one of Camavinga and Chouameni should leave. Dani Ceballos has to leave. Then Rodrigo Goes should leave. One of Brahim Diaz and Adagula has to leave. And I suspect it could be Brahim Diaz. Who else? At least those are 7 players that I can mention. Ferland Mendy is the 8th player. They should leave. And Real Madrid concentrate on building a better squad. Arteta must go. We are tired with him. That's Kelvin. Kelvin, I'm failing to read your McKenny. Makanye? Hi, Kelvin. Where are you joining us from? Based on your comments, I do take that you support Arsenal. Sorry about the loss. I'm an Arsenal fan too, by the way. So as well as a Real Madrid fan. So I understand where you're coming from. But unfortunately, he's there to stay. Mikel Arteta. Only pray for this. Which, unless let me ask you, Calvin. Would you rather win the league and Mikel Arteta stays, or would you rather not win the Premier League and Mikel Arteta leaves? Which of the two would you rather happens? If you give me that answer, then we can proceed with that conversation. Real says Spurs might not get relegated. They have a very good manager now in Roberto Di Zerbi, but anything can still happen. Do you see Osimhen as a Barcelona striker in the future? He doesn't look like a Barcelona type of striker. Not one bit, really. I mean, these days teams do the outliers, but I mean, I did not think Lewandowski was a Barcelona type of striker, but at least he was more adept to playing that way, having played for Bayern Munich, than Victor Osimhen. Brad Erling Haaland, I would not say he's not a. Brad Erling Haaland, I would still say he's not a Barcelona type of striker. But modern day football, when you look at the strikers market, whoever you get and you feel is the best there is on the market, you adapt to how he plays. It's that simple. That's how Manchester City did it. They brought in Brad Erling Haaland, adapted their game to playing around him, to his strength. And that's why when you go back when you look to his Premier League numbers, this is the first season that he has as many as 7 assists. Why? Because his interplay and at least creating some chances has improved. And how many seasons has it taken? Is this the 3rd season for him at Manchester City? Possibly. No, not the 3rd. Should be the 4th. He was part of their treble winning season, 2023, and then 2024. 2025 was there. Yeah, this is his 4th. So yeah. Okay. Did I miss any comments? No, I've not missed any comments. So, okay, I responded to the World Cup question from Corner FC. Okay. Kelvin, you've not responded. Oh, all right. Lastly, but not least, on our topic, on our menu tonight, was Chelsea. Chelsea beating Port Vale. I mean, it was an unexpected victory. You could say a routine victory against a very, very poor Port Vale side who bottom in the championship. Chelsea looked too good to handle. Tosin Aderabio among those on target. Joel Hato, Joao Pedro, Alejandro Garnacho from the penalty spot. Who else? I'm trying to remember. William Estaval. You know, at the end of the day, it was a routine win for this Chelsea side. By the way, Port Vale were really, really poor defending when it came to defending set pieces, second balls. You know, it was basically one-way traffic for this Chelsea side. You know, the goalkeeper tried to deal with the situation with that first goal, but it wasn't decisive enough. There was, you know, a millipede of legs. A multitude of legs. Even when I use the word millipede, because it's the millipede that has so many legs. Anyways, and they still could not keep that one out. Then for the second goal from Joao Pedro, I mean, you allow the striker to turn and are not there to put in the block or close him down. And anyway, to be fair, Chelsea was simply too strong for Port Vale. And then Joao Pedro was too smart about it. The way he controls that ball, and then he sort of fakes the defender into committing in his tackle, and then, you know, he goes on to score. It was brilliant. Do you see? Okay, no, I responded to that comment. I thought I'd not. And then the third goal, I think Malo Gusto, with the attempt, the goalkeeper gets his hand on it and it falls in the path of Akopama, one of the easiest goals he'll score. one of the easiest goals he scored. But I mean, that line breaking pass through the midfield from Tosin Aderabio is just something. It tells you how, sort of what how they what. I mean, goalkeeper. I don't know if um, Malo Gusto was attempting to strike the ball on goal, or he attempted it for a cross, and the goalkeeper put his hand to it before Cole Palmer tapped it home to make it 3-0. And that was all in the first half. Then in the second half, Chelsea just went right. In fact, Estaval hit the best of the upright, and I think Garnacho too. Portville was simply all over the place. But anyway, Chelsea needed this. After all they went through prior to the international break, losing to Newcastle, to Everton, losing to PSG twice, before winning away to Aston Villa, losing to Arsenal, they needed that. Because in between there, they had only won against Wrexham. So they really, really needed that. And then Tosin Aderabio, the way he gets his head across. I mean, beautiful, beautiful play. And then, I mean, Chelsea looked too good, too good. Home game, kind of game that you'd want. Chelsea fans must be really, really happy. Simply happy with their performance today. So, yeah. We'll be waiting for the FA Cup draw to decide who will face who. Andre Santos on target with the 5th goal. Now, I'd want the draw. This is how I would want it. Chelsea to have Man City in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. And then whoever comes through between Leeds and West Ham to take on Southampton. And the reason for that is that I do not want us to have, even though the sponsors would love a final between Chelsea and Manchester City, but I'd prefer one of those sort of underdog teams to make it to the final. Imagine if West Ham made it to the final. Imagine if Leeds made it to the final. Imagine if Southampton made it to the final. Really. So that's what I would wish for it to happen. Because a final between Chelsea and Man City at this stage of the competition does feel like the obvious. By the way, that penalty given against Garnacho, that was harsh. And Garnacho dispatched it, but it felt harsh. It felt harsh. So, anyway, a victory for Chelsea and 7-0 on the match. So, yeah, basically, that's what transpired during the course of today in terms of the major stories. I've told you about Real Madrid loss. They lost by 2-1. They lost very late on in the game because, excuse me, I don't know how to sum up Real Madrid, but it's all I can say is that performance. I hope they do not return with that in the Champions League. Of course, they were without the likes of Fede Valverde. He was serving his match ban for the straight red card he received during the Madrid derby and things like that. So yeah, but the goals did come through for Real Madrid. It was Eder Militao, and for Mallorca, I'm forgetting that striker that scores the winning goal. The name is eluding me. I don't know why. But yeah, a good game. A good game that I did have. Oh, sorry. Oh, come on. I think I was looking at. Yes. Molanes opened the scoring in the 41st minute. Then Eder Militao in the 88th minute. Now, once Real Madrid scored that equalizer through, I think it was a corner kick from Alexander Trent-Arnold that he puts into the back of the net. And then Muriqi scored in the 91st minute. Now, when Real Madrid go on the other side and score that equalizer, I'm thinking to myself, this is another one of those Real Madrid victories where they've not played well, but they're going to snatch the victory. Unfortunately for them, they could not defend well. You know? Kylian Mbappe missed a couple of chances, you know? But credit to the Mallorca goalkeeper for that first chance around the 21st minute, 22nd minute, thereabout. He really made a brilliant save, you know? So, and the goalkeeper was brilliant. It's like he knew. He came out for Mbappe. You know, in a season, you have those kinds of games where no matter what your striker does, it's just not going to get past a certain goalkeeper. So you have that. So Madrid did create their chances. The Mallorca goalkeeper was simply outstanding in his performance. And once you're not clinical with your chances, your opponent always has a chance. That's what keeps them in the game. And for as long as they remain in the game, the result can go either way. And basically, that's what it meant for Real Madrid. Molanes scoring in that 41st minute. Beautiful take. They were literally caught napping in that defense. Rudiger and Dean Haasen, Camavinga just trying to return. So they were caught napping. And, you know, they conceded. You know. So, yeah. It's been that sort of day. But I hope those whose teams lost, I hope you pick yourselves up as fast as possible and move on to the next game. I don't know how soon the next game will come for you, but at least for Liverpool and Arsenal, the next game is going to come midweek in the UEFA Champions League. Then for Chelsea, it's a victory. So you have something to sort of relish in through the entire week as you prepare yourselves to face Man City, you know, next weekend. For Real Madrid, they have to pick themselves up and go ahead and go again against Bayern Munich. Should Bayern Munich knock them out of the UEFA Champions League, I think we will have seen perhaps the end of Alvaro Arbeloa at Real Madrid. But I mean, why even bother to make the change when you have only when you have only 8 games left to play? Because if they exit from the UEFA Champions League, they'll only have the Spanish La Liga to concentrate on and will have only 8 games left to play. But it's Real Madrid. They never hesitate to pull the trigger. You know, anything can happen. Mr. Morgan Arthur says, how far can Valverde lead Uruguay in the World Cup? Quarterfinal, maybe group stage? Wow, that's a difficult question. To be fair, Uruguay do not have that standard squad. We're not talking about a Uruguay side that had, for example, the 2010 side that had Luis Suarez, that had Diego Forlan Colanzo, that had those sort of players that, you know, and presently they have Darwin Núñez as one of the strikers. I remember watching them, I think at the 2018 World Cup. That's when I loved Lucas Torreira. They looked okay, but I don't see them in the quarterfinals. I really don't. It will be a surprise if they make it there. I really don't. Freddy is good, but carrying that entire team on his shoulders. Is he capable? This has not been the season where he's given you the sort of performances where you make the argument that he's really, really capable. I've seen better seasons from Fede Valverde, but until his performance against Manchester City in the first leg and subsequently in the second leg, as well as his performance against Atletico de Madrid, despite getting a red card, when you put his entire season on a weighing scale, trust me, it's not worth it's not worth what you expect of him, really. So unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not feeling too positive about South American teams, by the way, in the upcoming World Cup. I'll wait for surprises. Surprises do not discriminate. Maybe they come and give us the dark horse. I do not know. But when I look at teams around Europe, I feel that Europe has very, very strong teams. Argentina, I'm waiting to see them in the actual tournament. We've had instances where a World Cup winner comes back in the subsequent World Cup and they're too shambolic. France are one of the outliers when, okay, not only France, but okay, to the best of my recollection, you go back to Brazil, they win it 94, they come back in 98 and they are good. They lost the final. They lost to France. France, 2018, win it, come back and make it to the finals in 2022. But go back to Spain when they win it in 2010. When they came in 2014, could not even make it out of the group stages. Remember, Netherlands, I think Netherlands beat them by, what, was it 4-1? Van Persie's flying header, you remember that? Then you remember German won it in 2014, but in 2018, I don't remember how far they went, but it wasn't that far. They did not make it even to the semifinals. I don't think, were they in the quarterfinals, by the way? I stand to be corrected, you know? So yeah, that's how I view them. But Argentina, they have a decent team. They have a decent team. But when I look at those squads, pound for pound, depth and quality, I think Portugal has one of the most threatening squads. Mr. Morgan Arthur, where are you joining us from? But it's a pleasure to have you. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here, at least to the best of my recollection. You also say, I mean, maybe Valverde is the lone man, I mean, to lead them, but I think group stage marks not anything else than that. I think they could make it out of the group stages. By the way, they are under the charges of former Leeds and ex-Athletic Bilbao manager in Marcel Bielsa. So, you never know. Seeing France play, I think they are going to the final guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed in life apart from taxes and death. Those are the only things that are guaranteed in life. You see, you can see France playing really, really well. But by the way, I do not look at France and I see a balanced team. They're not balanced at all. I see a team that has a very, very good attack in terms of wingers, attacking midfielders, and strikers. Very, very good. When I look at their midfield, though, and I remember that it's Tchouaméni, N'Golo Kante, Adrien Rabiot, and a few others, I'm sort of a bit taken aback to say, maybe you're not as good as you think you are. You look at their backline, which on any given day can really, really be brilliant. Didier Deschamps lacks the partnership of Dayot Upamecano and Ibrahim Konate. Now, go watch them against Brazil. They looked unconvincing, in my opinion. But they have a Saliba in there. They have a Theo Hernandez. They have a Malo Gusto. They have Benjamin Pavard. Look at their goalkeeper, Mike Maignan, from AC Milan. He's not one of the best 5 goalkeepers that you'd think of currently in Europe. So there's that. So yes, they are very capable, and their strength, like I said, their strength is in there. I watched them against Spain in the UEFA Nations League semi-finals. They lost 5-4. And I think they won against Germany. Was it 2-0 in the third place playoff? You know, they're that and that. Okay, you say predict Portugal progress in this World Cup. How far can they go before having a difficult win? I think they can go as far as the quarterfinals before having a difficult win. Um, they're one of the teams that I do anticipate could go as far as the as far as the semifinals, and not too far ago. I was trying to to try and look into what they have in terms of their squad, and they really have a very brilliant squad. I don't know, where did I put that? Okay, I don't have much knowledge of football, but I think semi's gonna be Spain, France, Argentina, Portugal, maybe. Oh, so you think England are not making it to the semi-finals? Football is not coming home, like they often chant it. You know, is that what you think? I mean, when you look at the Portugal squad, for me, it's really Roberto Martinez is going to be sport for choice. Right from, they have some of the best midfielders, goalkeepers, Diego Costa at FC Porto, Jose Sa at Wolverhampton Wanderers, hasn't had a very good season. Rui Silva at Sporting Lisbon. Then they have Luis Patricio at Atlanta and Joao Carvalho at Braga. That's 4 goalkeepers. They must choose at least 3. Now, I do suspect Diego Costa is the number 1. He will go. Rui Silva will go. That's at FC Porto. And possibly Jose Sa. Those are the ones that will go for goalkeepers. Then you look at their defense. There are players like Nuno Mendes at PSG, Ruben Diaz at Man City, Matheus Nunes at Man City. This is not a defender. He's a midfielder, but Pep Guardiola predominantly plays him as a right back. So Diego Dalot at Manchester United, Goncalo Inacio at Sporting CP. They have Nelson Semedo. I do not think this one will make it. Will make the final squad, but there's a way Thingy likes him. Roberto Martinez. He could make the final squad, by the way. Nelson Semedo, the former Wolves, former Wolves and ex-Barcelona player, Nelson Semedo. Then Joao Cancelo is doing okay, fairly okay at Barcelona. Nuno Tavares, a left back at Lazio. Renato Viega, centre back, signed to Villarreal from Chelsea. Those kinds of players. Totti Gomez at Wolves. Joao Mario at Athens. So Antonio Silva at Benfica. Is it Benfica? Yeah, at Benfica. So then you look at the midfield. You say, to be honest, just supported football for 2 years, had a lot of passion for it, but the environment and skills told me, no, I am not even going to be playing state higher football, even if I am lucky. I think transition your passion of playing it into supporting it. That's the only the only thing I'd say to you if you're no longer actively playing it. So you look at their midfield: Joao Neves, PSG, Vitinha, PSG, Joao Paulinho, Tottenham /Bayern Munich. He's on loan from Bayern Munich to Tottenham. Bernardo Silva will be leaving Man City at the end of the season. Pablo Goncalves, Sporting CP. Bruno Fernandes, Man United. Ruben Neves, Al Hilal. Andreas Gomez, Columbus Crew. Renato Sanchez. I do not think this one will make the final squad. I mean, Renato Sanchez, his career has gone just like that, in a way. Then Dario Esugo at Chelsea. So, I mean, when you look at Vitinha and Joao Neves, now the challenge is for Portugal at the national team, they like to play Vitinha, then alongside Ruben Neves and Bruno Fernandes. That sort of triangle. Or they play Vitinha and Bernardo Silva and then Fernandes. So either way, we'll wait and see. But if you ask me, their midfield trio, I don't know. I would try not to interrupt that partnership between Vitinho and Joao Neves. I'd let it be. And then Bruno Fernandes would start ahead of Bernardo Silva. And then in terms of substitution, Bernardo Silva can come in for Bruno Fernandes. Ruben Neves can come in for Joao Neves and something like that. That's how I look at it in my head. Then the forwards, of course, are Cristiano Ronaldo is still there at Al Nassr, Rafael Leao, AC Milan, Goncalo Ramos, PSG, Francesco Trincao, Sporting CP, Joao Felix at Al Nassr as well, Goncalo Guedes, Real Sociedad, Fabio Silva, Borussia Dortmund, Fabio Cavallo, I don't think he will make it at Brentford, Giovanni Quenda, I don't think he will make the squad. He's not had that good a season, I think. Pedro Neto, I think this one could make this final squad from Chelsea. Francesco Conceição at Juventus. And then Carlos Forbes from Club Brugge. I think Carlos Forbes could make it. If you watched him in Barcelona's 3-3 draw against Club Brugge, he was one of those better performers on the evening. So yeah. But Arthur, I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the broadcast. But thank you so much for dedicating the time to be with us. Guys, I don't remember the last time I did this. It's 2 a.m., 5 minutes past 2 a.m. We've been here for 2 hours and 3 minutes. We usually do the 2 hours when we are doing a watch along on UEFA Champions League nights or things like that, or any other game. And usually that broadcast starts at 11. But because this one started at midnight, it's 2 a.m. So it would have been 2 hours if we started 11 and it would be 1 a.m. But anyways, it's been a very, very fruitful discussion. I think this is one of the best lives I've had or we've had on the channel in the recent past. I do not remember the last time we had this much engagement and very, very fruitful discussion from all walks of life. So allow me to say thank you to Wagner, Araujo, Pedri. Thank you so much. As always, Pedri is one of our usual suspects. Rarely does he go a week without at least attending half of our broadcasts, which we do every single day, Monday to Sunday for the 11 p.m. broadcast. Apart from Fridays, we come a bit earlier. And then mornings, that's at between 9 and 10 every single day, Monday to Saturday. And then, so thank you so much, Aaron Phillips. Oh, Aaron Phillips. How did I miss your comment? I don't remember reading the hi, but thank you so much, Aaron Phillips. Thank you so much, Tester of Life, for having been part of this fruitful discussion. Maslow, thank you so much for having chipped in. Okay. Then thank you so much, Kona FC. Ox Smells, thank you so much. Kona FC time, it's been a pleasure. Sad Imran, thank you so much for having been part of tonight's discussion. Then Michael Matovu, it's always a pleasure. Then let me see. Ali, always a pleasure to see you back, my brother. Thank you so much for always sparing a moment to chip in. Pitch VFX, thank you so much. Rio Dandy, 888, thank you so much for having been part of tonight's broadcast. Calvin, always it's been a pleasure seeing you here for the first time, although you left us one comment and went away. Mr. Morgan Arthur, thank you so much for having chosen to be part of tonight's podcast. Tomorrow is Easter. I say happy Easter to all the faithfuls out there, for the Christians out there, and all those that respect it for what it is. For those of you that have subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for choosing to join the Football Tribe UG community. Much appreciated. Then do not stop at subscribing only. Turn on your notifications so that you can be notified every time we have a new video put out. Go under the video section on the channel, watch all those videos. Let us know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Then do the same for our live broadcasts. And for those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do appreciate you a great deal. Thank you so much for the contribution you add to building this Football Tribe UG community. So it's always a pleasure. Allow me wish you a blessed night, and let's do this again on Monday, Easter Monday. I'm thinking tomorrow I can be excused. It's Easter. Let me take that day off, but it will depend. We'll see how things go. You never know. We could have perhaps our hand could be forced, and then we come on for a broadcast. Have yourselves a blessed night. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now. Oh, the live doesn't